All over the world, we see people protesting against Israel and supporting Palestine. The people who protest can be divided into two groups. The first group are migrants who escaped the Middle East and do not want to live there anymore, and they decided they want to live in a civilized world. Unfortunately, they are not satisfied very long with this land that they escaped to and received haven from, and soon they want to enforce their religion on everybody and change the democratic process. So that's group number one. Group number two are mostly young people who have never been to the Middle East and think they understand the Middle East, but in fact they do not know nothing about what is happening in Israel. And the best example of this is a protest that was done recently in front of the Nova exhibit in New York. The exhibit showed the tragedy of October 7th, where hundreds of people lost their life, were injured, and lost somebody close. So, in a moment of great pain for the Jewish people, the protesters were shouting, "Free Palestine," and "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And the ironic thing about it is that the majority of the people gathered there have no idea what river and what sea are we talking about.
Seen videos, and I don't know if all these students understand exactly why they are here or if they're just joining the crowd. I want to know if they actually understand why they are protesting and see if they can give me any good answers. What are you guys out here protesting for?
No comment.
Why are you guys out here today?
Speak to the organizers.
Why can't I wanted to ask you though.
Official statements from the organizers only.
From the river to the sea?
Yes.
Okay, which river, which sea?
The sea of...
So you don't know
No.
The answer was the Mediterranean and the Jordan.
Ask pretty much any person why the West Bank is called the West Bank. Probably 1 or 2 out of 10 people will know the answer. So in this video, we're going to check out this video by a guy named Timek out of Warsaw from My Israel channel. He's great at 3D renditions. Check out this video. We're going to watch it together and then talk about it. But first, hit subscribe in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch.
Now, before I explain what the West Bank means, I would like to point out that the real name of this place is called Judea and Samaria. This is how this territory was known for centuries, and here we can find cities like Hebron, very important for the Jewish people. In the center of this territory is the most important city for the Jewish history, Jerusalem, right in the middle of Judea. On this map you can now see the Temple Mount, the City of David, and the Old City of today's Jerusalem. And all those places are tremendously important for Israel's history. Jewish people cannot be separated from those places. If we move north to Samaria, we also find extremely important places for biblical history, like for example the city of Beth El. Beth El literally means from Hebrew the house of God. And so please don't call this place the West Bank, but call it Judea and Samaria. And no matter if we're talking about the Tanakh, the Old Testament, or the New Testament, this place in the Bible is called Judea and Samaria, and not the West Bank. Okay, but why do people call this place the West Bank? And the West Bank of what? This is a natural question, right? Well, to understand the origin of this whole mess, we actually have to go to Great Britain. Yes, Great Britain, I'm afraid you are responsible for a lot of the mess we see in the Middle East. You see, during World War I, the Central Powers were joined by the Ottoman Empire against England, France, and the Soviet Union. And you see, during that time, the Great British Empire was also controlling the territory of today's Egypt. And in Egypt, we have the Suez Canal, which was of a strategic importance to the Great Britain. Of the many colonies that the British Empire had, one of the most important was in India. And the Suez Canal enabled Great Britain of a quick shipment of goods to Great Britain. Otherwise, they would have to go around Africa. But when the Ottoman Empire joined Germany in World War I, suddenly this territory of the Sinai Peninsula and the Suez Canal were threatened by the Ottoman army. The British were of course able to repel the attacking Ottoman armies, but the region became very unstable in the critical part of the British Empire. This is when the British started making decisions that would change the region forever. If you want to find out why the Middle East is so messed up, it's because of the decisions that the Great Britain made at this certain point. So first the British made a promise to the Sharif of Mecca, Husseini, who was a rebel in the Ottoman Empire, and encouraged him to attack the Ottoman Empire. And in return, the British said they will give him the ability to create an independent Arab state. And this new country would include territories of today's Israel. However, the British were not very honest with the Arabs because they have made a secret agreement with the French to divide the Ottoman Empire between themselves, and the territory of today's Israel was to be under British, French, and the Soviet Union jurisdiction. Check out Sykes-Picot Agreement to find out more. But if that wasn't enough to cause problems, the British have also promised this territory to the Jewish people. In November 1917, so before even the British start to govern Jerusalem, they release a document called the Balfour Declaration. And in this document, we can read that the British government views with favor the creation of a home for the Jewish people in the Holy Land. Of course, this declaration turbocharged Jewish people to return to their homeland. And as expected, the Arab people were saying, wait a minute, you promised this to us. What's going on here? So, to sum up, the British promised the same piece of land to the Arabs, to the Jewish people, and to the French. No wonder that this situation caused a lot of confusion, anger, and tension. The British were, however, successful on the military front. They were able to defeat the Ottomans, and in December 1917, General Allenby enters Jerusalem. What happens next is very important and shapes the situation in Israel, and is also an answer why the West Bank is called the West Bank. The coalition of the German Empire lost World War I to a coalition of Britain and France. The result of World War I had a huge impact on the situation in the Near East because the Ottoman Empire basically ceased to exist. And basically, after the Ottoman Empire has collapsed, all this territory you can see here in yellow was to be governed by Britain and France. After World War I, the British and French once again started drawing up borders, ensuring their influence in the Near and Middle East. The borders were different from the Sykes-Picot Agreement that the British and the French secretly planned during World War I, but not by much. Many of the countries that were created after World War I shaped their borders around the British and French mandate. But the area that really interests us right now is over here, because that's the territory of today's Israel. And the British controlled this territory for over 20 years. And only after World War II, this territory was divided and Jordan received its independence. But the territory we know as Israel today was still under British control. However, by that time, on the territory of the British Mandate, you had a very mixed community. the Jews owned a lot of the land which they bought from the Ottoman Empire or the local Arabs, and you also had an Arab community, which some of them have been there for a long time, and others have emigrated from other parts of the Ottoman Empire. However, both communities, the Jewish and the Arab, were not very happy about the current state, because none of them had a state, a home. It was all controlled by the British. Both groups demanded independence from the British Empire. After all, this is what the British promised to the Jews and to the Arabs. The problem was they promised it in the same place. When the British realized that this is a mess, they decided to leave and have the United Nations take care of it. And the outcome of that was a partition plan of 1947 between the Arabs and the Jews. This partition plan divided the British mandate and made Jerusalem an international capital of the land. The Jewish people were quite happy about this partition plan and accepted it, but the Arabs rejected it. And it's not so much that the Arabs within the land that have rejected this proposal, but it was rejected by the newly created countries around Israel that formed the Arab League of Nations. Now, Israel seized the moment. Israel knew it's a 1 in 1,000 years chance, and they announced their independence. Now, the Arabs were not happy about this state, so they decided to deal with the Jews themselves. So first they told the Arabs living in the land to escape so that they won't be caught in the fire and just wait until Israel is destroyed. Till today, many of those Arabs still live in refugee camps because the Arab states won't accept them. You would think that with all that time and money that the Arab states have from oil, they would provide those refugees with a citizenship and homes. But no, they didn't. They didn't because they want to keep that problem and blame Israel for it. Anyway, what happened next is that the Arab states attacked Israel with the goal to basically throw all the Jewish people into the Mediterranean Sea. The plan was basically another Holocaust on the Jewish people. But as we know, that didn't happen. And the Arab states, the 5 countries that attacked Israel, actually lost this battle. And after the war, Israel actually controlled more of the land than it was proposed by the United Nations. Another outcome of this war was that Egypt started to control Gaza, which we talked in the beginning of the video, and Jordan annexed the territory which often today is called the West Bank. So finally I can answer this question, why the West Bank is called the West Bank. And of course I could just give you the answer right away, but if I did that, you would not understand the whole context of this territory and who lives there. So the West Bank is called the West Bank because it's on the west side of the river Jordan. By the way, this is this famous river that is shouted all over the world, from the river to the sea. So when people are shouting from the river to the sea, it means from the river Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. So basically what they are saying is that they want to do to the Jewish people the same thing that the Arabs wanted to do in 48, when they attacked Israel from all sides. Anyway, after the War of Independence, which the Arab states called the Great Tragedy, Jordan was controlling the West Bank. But you see, Jordan was not happy controlling all this territory called the West Bank, because it consisted of a lot of refugees and they were making a lot of problems for the Kingdom of Jordan. Jordan basically wanted to freeze this problem until there will be another encounter with Israel. Israel will be defeated and the refugees will go back where they came from. But the refugees and the Arabs living in the West Bank were really not happy with this situation. They were waiting and nothing is happening, so they decided they will start doing something themselves. This is when the PLO is created, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and a famous person steps up to the stage, Yasser Arafat.
You see, part of establishing the Jewish state, which is a commandment in the Torah that we're required to do. Secondly, we're required to drive out the people inside of the land. The 7 nations that inhabited the land are required to be driven out. And God explains this to us in Leviticus 18, verse 3, where God says, Kamase Eretz Mitzrayim, like the actions of the people of Egypt, Asher Yashavtem ba, Lo Isasu, don't do the actions that the Egyptians did. And Ukemaise Eretz Canaan Asher Ani Mevi Eschem Shama, and like the actions of the people who live in Canaan, who I'm bringing you to, Lo Isasu, you should not do. Ubuchu Kaiseyem Lo Telechu, and don't follow their protocols, don't follow their ideologies. And this is a very interesting thing, because God not only sets us up to conquer a land, he asks us to drive the people out, and he tells us specifically that these people in this land are the worst of the worst. And Rashi says this is to teach us that the Egyptians and the Canaanim are the same type of people. But in fact, Canaanim are worse. The people living in Israel before the Jews come and arrive will be worse than the Egyptians were to the Jews. And those are the Palestinians that we're dealing with right now. On the place where the Jews will dwell, Mukukol minakol. Rashi continues and says, Asher ani mevi eschem shama, that I'm going to bring you there. Magid sha'osin amim, it teaches us that these nations, shekavshu Yisrael, that the Jewish people will conquer when they take over this land, mukukolim mikulam, they are the worst of the worst. You see, God sets up greatness for the Jewish people. You know, there's something called impurity, tumah. Tumah is that a dead Jew, if somebody comes in contact or is in the house, they become impure and they have to go through a ritual purification, which involves the red heifer. But this only applies to a Jew, because a Jew has potential to be able to eradicate evil in the world. And God tells us that I am choosing a land whose inhabitants are the very essence of evil. And you need to remove them from the land, because the land suffers when they are inside of it. And the Jews will be able to flourish when this is taken care of. And in fact, going back to the spies, all the way back when the Jews were in the desert, they needed to do one thing. They needed to conquer the land. But yet, it was the fear that the 10 spies who came back and gave their report, it was that fear of the people inside of the land, the fear of facing the enemy, which held them back. And they sat and cried. And they cried on the night of Tisha B'Av, which was the night when the first temple and the second temple were destroyed. They were crying because they did not want to face evil straight in the face. When the PLO was established, when there's all these, whatever you name it, it is the Shiite Islamic radical Muslim agenda of Iran. It's their proxies, and we right now are fighting them in the north. And this evil is the evil that can steer the face of the miracles that are witnessed by the world of the Jews returning to the land. You see, that video was great. Actually, we're doing a video together with him. I'm working with him, like I said before. But we need to understand that their motivation over here is the establishment of the State of Israel is a theological problem to them. And they understand that the second 50% of the Jews have returned, this creates a problem. So today is Yom HaAtzmaut, the day of Jewish independence, and it's impossible not to recognize the miracles that needed to happen for the establishment of the State of Israel. That video helped us understand this, but we still need to remember that in this land, as long as we do our part, every Jew and every Gentile around the world is able to stand up and call evil for what it is, to not be like those protesters who don't know what the river to the sea means, don't know the history. Hopefully we'll be able to do another video on the biblical history of Jerusalem. Thank you for watching. Shalom from just outside Jerusalem.